Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the greatest jock of them all? Must be Cousin Brucey, because the damn thing didn't break. All right, now it's the reading of the Gospel according to Joey. This is the 4th chapter in my book called Let a Smile Be Your Umbrella, But Don't Get a Mouthful of Rain. It's available at all very, very good, high-quality gas stations. Oh, man, I don't know where you can get this thing. You gotta order it from Frank Minishak. And I want to thank my friend Loretta Cochia for having me, giving me the living room so that I could record this thing today. Well, we're doing an audiobook. It's an audiobook on Let a Smile Be Your Umbrella, But Don't Get a Mouthful of Rain, the Joey Reynolds Story, read by Joey Reynolds, which means that I can edit it as I go. You're not supposed to do that, you know. It's supposed to be just as written, but it's what they call an artistic license, right? Is that what they get pissed off at that in Hollywood? They get pissed off at a lot of things in Hollywood, you know. But, you know, Hollywood's a parasite. It is this year. It always is. That's 2 sites. Okay, here we go. This is chapter 4. It's called Pulled from the Pit. If a frog had wings, it wouldn't bump its ass. That's one of my favorite old sayings. Now, let's continue on. After I lost Chester Pipkin to God, he was a minister. I went back east, left California. I ran into a friend of mine, Charlie Roberts, who had a radio station job in Lakewood, New Jersey, and Seymour Abramson, who owned the station, also owned a liquor store, a couple of them, I guess, and Dunkin' Donuts. Now, this is my kind of guy. But I stopped drinking at this point. The man was living my dream, but it was too late. Oh, the OA meetings, no more donuts, no more booze. If it ended in A, I was going to the damn meeting. Seymour and I became partners in his little daytime station, which was 1170 on the dial. Instead of going on the air, I decided to do the programming, to manage the place, create a lively electric environment there, eclectic environment. But both are true. I rotated disc jockeys. I figured, well, since it's on morning to night and not overnight, what does it matter what time anybody's on? So even the morning guy was rotated. Each jock should have a shot at every slot. I worked the news that way too. News was broadcast only when it happened, and then I took it off. And you never heard from it again. Isn't that a thrill? A working story would be reported as it was unfolding, but I ran no old news. Old news was for the toilet. I probably had too many DJs. I really wanted listeners to hear a lot of excitement. I staged shows at the Holiday Inn so the audience could see the radio personalities. We had the Chippendale dancers and fashion models at one event. I brought Steve Marachuk in, and even Pam Dauber from Mork and Mindy. She was a good friend. She stayed at the Holiday Inn there. We had a lot of fun. I held this feminine forum, I call it, where people could discuss women's issues. How about that? This is 1976. Wow. And that's these feminine things that we did on the radio were for the growth of women. And I was doing this a long time ago before you guys all got crazy. These sorts of things kept us involved in the community, and I established an in-house ad agency that created ads for both radio and print. So, you know, you didn't have to go to an ad agency, which they didn't like too well, but we didn't have many powerful ones anyway. My ambitious programming was overkill for Little Lakewood, because Lakewood was a little radio station, but it covered the Jersey Shore all over. The station covered the whole Jersey Shore, and we were beating WABC in the ratings. I called the station, it was 1170, I called it 11.7 Jersey Shore. And I didn't use the call letters, and the reason was in 1976, New Jersey's gambling referendum came up. 11 and 7 were the hot numbers for craps. So I used the dice as a logo, and the little station was actually quite successful. It was during this time that I met Carolyn. She was my dentist's hygienist. I couldn't believe anything so sweet was allowed in a dental office. She was, and still is, pretty, blonde, quiet, unassuming, and smart, with a great smile and perfect posture. She had all the qualities I liked. She liked to drink too then. But I stopped. Too bad. I'll tell you something about her too. She was a hygienist working on me and had all these tools in my mouth and thought I was a quiet guy. I suppose the reason I hadn't had any long-lasting relationships with women up until then was that I never stayed long enough in one job or in one town. Plus, they all reminded me of my mother. No girl had been crazy enough to follow me all over the map, but I knew Carolyn was different. She came to visit me after I wound up in Pittsburgh. Anybody who would do that is love. That's love. Smoked a lot of weed in Pittsburgh. They call it the Renaissance City. That's a whole other story. Taft Broadcasting in Cincinnati tracked me down in Lakewood, offered me a very tempting job, a consulting job. Taft had just bought KQV in Pittsburgh. Big station, was owned by ABC, and they sold it. They wanted to kick the station off right, so that I abandoned the station in Lakewood, which eventually got sold to the big FM competition there. As a consulting programmer in Pittsburgh, I started the morning show at 4 a.m. because it's a whistle town, where people go to work. Easy to work town and early to work town. People were going to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, avoiding traffic. And because the townspeople are big into bowling, I made a TV commercial for the station called The Tomb of the Unknown Bowler, in which a bowling pin rose from the earth as people worshipped it, like in the music from 2001. Bum, 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 bum. And the titles read KQV, The Mouth of Man. It was good. The studio was situated in the window of the Chamber of Commerce building in downtown Pittsburgh, and the radio station was visible to listeners. So I hired TV, weather people, and put sports scoreboards in the window. Even had girls have wet-down T-shirts. That was very big on the window, but I was on the inside watching the T-shirts. Even more attractive. I also hired the mayor of the city, Pete Flaherty. He was a Democrat. He became the morning man, on the air between 7 and 9 on his way to work. He was billed, of course, as the morning mayor of Pittsburgh, because he really was. We paid him $50,000 for 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday. I guess he wasn't the first DJ to show up for work in a limo. But I believe in putting on a good show and giving a lot of stuff away. Promotion's all about creating an event. At that time, though no one was doing that much promotion during the day on an AM station, I was accused of overproducing. I was ahead of the curve. About 10 years later, Rush Limbaugh would go on middays and overproduce AM radio again. Taft guys became worried that I was a loose cannon, that I was going to blow the place up. Well, I planned on it. The Taft guys were not too far from the truth, but I'll give you that little rap. See, one of them was the president of the United States, the other one was a senator, and they owned big television and radio stations with the biggest stars in all of Ohio, Cincinnati, and the biggest station in the country was WLW's 500,000 watts during the war. So nobody had that signal. Nobody could have more than 50,000 watts. KQV Pittsburgh was the first station, first commercial one. There was KDKA was the first. I think KDKA was the first commercial one. KQV was the first one on the air. That's why they got 3 letters. See? I was going to blow the place up. Did I leave off there? Yeah. I'm sure it didn't help my image that I was smoking a lot of pot. But they already did give me the keys to the store and the city. Why, the mayor? That's an easy one. I knew it wasn't my money, which made me even more of a risk taker. Naturally, my management was nervous, so they sent me to Washington, D.C. to talk to their attorneys. I figured they wanted to buy me out of my contract gracefully. I knew it wasn't exactly their Lipton's cup of soup, and I was never going to be. The law firm, Steptoe and Johnson. My. It's a kind of establishment where you sank into the carpet and were served everything on elegant china. Speaking of China, nothing elegant about China right now. I sat down across from one of the lawyers who was apparently trying to determine if I was mentally ill. He reminded me of Myron Cohen, the comic. He was a Jewish guy with those big ears, looked like he was going to fly away any minute now. And he looked down at me. I had noticed that he was noticing my ballet slippers, he called them, but they were actually soft leather ballet slippers. Ballet, not ballet. And I didn't have any socks. So he looked at me and he said, "Stay out of politics." Steptoe and Johnson's right across the street from the White House, People stay there all the time. In other words, he didn't think by the style of my footwear I had any business working for such a formal company with a president, a senator, and after all, Taft Broadcasting, the House of Presidents and Senators, it's very conservative. "What do you want to do?" he asked. And I said, "I want you to give me the money and the contract you signed with me." That's what I said. "You don't want me to be here? Think I'm the wrong guy for the job? Give me the rest of the money and I'll go home and I'll play." And that's exactly what I did. I have Taft money. With the Taft money in my pocket, I took Carolyn to California. She packed her car, and it was a Ford suitcase, is what it was. She'd never been there. We visited my friend Harvey Cooper, became the new vice president of 20th Century Fox. So guess what? Harvey, in a mad moment, hired me. I didn't get hired right away. Harvey was born to be through the ranks. He was Napoleonic in both temperament and stature. In an instant, he could size up guys twice his height and half his intellect. The funniest man just by being himself. Harvey didn't mince words. You'd tell him something and he'd bellow back his one-word opinion on the subject. Having a conversation with him was like playing a word association game. I'd say, Harvey, I'm going to see so-and-so, pig. I'd say, we're going up to corner, diner, and rat hole. I said, did you see the new Universal picture? Nauseating. It was an added handicap when he started the conversations. I recently ran into Harvey. I hadn't seen him in years. He was wearing a Nehru shirt, had gray streaks in his hair, and was carrying one of those little man purses. He wrapped up the conversation before it began. First thing he said to me was, now you know what it looks like to be middle-aged. Yeah, a Jew middle-aged in Woodland Hills. That's what it looked like. Harvey and his wife had a nice home in Woodland Hills, and Carolyn and I sat around the pool. He started sizing up my situation. He said, you know, you've been doing wrong all your life, Joey. You let people put a collar around you. You're an eagle. You can't put a collar around an eagle. You need to be set free. So do what you like. Create the way you did at the station in Lakewood, like you try to do in Pittsburgh with the jingles or on the air. You need to be in your own little area, and I want to give you an opportunity to do that. Come to 20th Century Fox. I won't bring you into the company. I'll bring the company into you. So Harvey continued, I'll make you the consultant, so you won't have to report to anybody corporate, and you can do all the creative work from me. What do you say? I said, we'll both be out of there in an hour. So Carolyn and her brother, who lived in Ventura, flew back to Jersey and packed her car, what I call the 77 Samsonite, because all our clothes were stuffed under the seats. She closed the apartment in Lakewood, took the cats, and I think she gave them away. I hope she did, because I don't remember seeing them again. Anyway, she and her brother drove all the way back to California, and they ate 10 pounds of pistachios because they didn't want to stop. Carolyn and I had a wonderful, we moved in with Harvey for a while. He'd open the closet door and we'd fall out necking. It was very bad for his teenage kids. They were just bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, and appalled. That's another Jewish holiday. We were in Calabasas, which was a dirt road at the time. Now it's a prime spot to live in Southern California. All these big shots lived there. But when we lived there, it was a dirt road, and they had the movie stars motion picture retirement home at the end of the street where Tonto was. Meanwhile, we had the first house on Park Calabasas, on Park Granada. Before I went to work with Harvey in the morning, there was a little condition. He didn't mention it first. Very discreetly, he took me to AA to get me sober. I was kind of sober in Pittsburgh. I was sober, then I was, playing back and forth with weed. He said that when I dried out, he'd start giving me work. So I was ready to quit drinking. I was sick of the results, the hangovers, the blackouts, and Chester had planted the seed of wanting me to stop drinking a few years earlier. But I didn't do it through the Bible. I figured, if God wanted me to stop drinking, he wouldn't give me the desire. I hated the AA meetings. At first, I'd rather drink than go to them. But then I wised up and said I'd rather not drink and never have to go to another one of those meetings. I've been sober for, now it's 40 years. But when you give up a buzz cold turkey, you often look for a replacement. I didn't like acid because I was a little too exhausting. You had to dedicate your whole day to that. I didn't like that. Ludes, they made me feel really stupid. I didn't like that, so I smoked more and more pot. Made me hungry and lethargic. Side effects I could live with, at least. Pot allowed me to maintain a semblance of a life. Well, finally sober, I went to work for Harvey. I rented I rented the office space at 20th Century Fox downstairs. It had its own entrance off the lot, and when the Fox folks got comfortable with me, they offered me a job, and I became the creative director. I was responsible for all of their promotions. I reported to the marketing director, Arnie Orleans, who was the best boss I ever had, and Caroline Molzan, who taught me all I know about marketing and turning out promotional items. we did the promotions for everything that year. 20th Century Fox was no longer in the movie business. They sucked. We had some hit some hit shows on television. Love Boat and MASH. I'd say those are great. Eventually 90210 and other spelling things. He was terrific. And we also had we owned the Marine Land, which was an investment that 20th Century Fox management made because they didn't want to get in films. They were losing so much money. You know, the biggest bomb ever was Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor. Then they came up with this other film that was a bomb too, Tora, or I called it Bora, Bora, Bora. And then we had that one with Walter Matthau and Barbra Streisand, which they kept the billboard up. I wish they would have burned it for Hello Dolly. It was Goodbye Studio. And they turned the place into the lot into Century City. That's what Century City was, 20th Century Fox, and right next to the studio. But I'll tell you this, Caroline Mauzan taught me to do the artwork, and I ran a great department. We did Star Wars, The Omen, Turning Point, An Unmarried Woman, all Academy Awards. We were grinding out lots of stuff. Barry White, Kenny Nolan, I Like Dreaming even came along. He also wrote with Bob Crew, My Eyes Adored You, the Four Seasons. We bought soundtrack albums like Poseidon Adventure, There's Got to Be a Morning After, made them on art form again. The biggest hit for me was to bring back the searchlights that went da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. They got rid of that. They're going to get rid of it again now that Disney owns it. Our biggest hit was the soundtrack to Star Wars. That was the one with John Williams. Harvey looked out for me. He was worried that I really didn't belong inside the corporate life. And when office politics looked like they were getting the better of me, Harvey said, Joey, you got to stick up for yourself. How, I asked. Tell me what to do, and then I'll do it. Harvey said, what do you mean, what to do? Just stick up for yourself. I gave him a blank stare, and then he threw up his hands and he said, never mind, Joey, I'll take care of it. My pot habit did not escape Harvey's Napoleonic watch, but he didn't press me on it. He was quick to confront me. Now, this is the first time I've told the story, but Alan Livingston was the president. And at the time, I can't tell too much because I don't want to do a telltale book. That's another book. But we would smoke weed in my bathroom, and it would come out through the vent onto the parking lot where everybody parked. But I didn't know that. And that's why everybody had an extra wonderful feeling by the time they reached the stairs to go to work after they passed my door and the toilet with the fan blowing the weed. And they were, this is way before medical marijuana. Harvey decided that my weakness for drugs was adolescent, that I was a spoiled kid living in a candy store. So to straighten me out, he sent me to a specialist, a pediatric psychiatrist. Needless to say, it was a learning experience for both of us. One thing I learned without the shrink's help is that cocaine is God's way of saying you're too rich. I was living as high as I was getting. I drove around in a Mercedes convertible. The studio, what did I get at first? Pregnant roller skate. I had that Honda. Carolyn, the one with the hatchback, Carolyn and I bought an amazing house on a hilltop with a 360-degree. Well, I bought this first, the view of Los Angeles, indoor-outdoor pool. That was on Paseo. No, that was the one in Palos Verdes, another house. The one in L.A. overlooking Laurel Canyon on one side, right at the very top. You see a lot of movies. They use it in a lot of movies. That was my house right there, indoor-outdoor pool. I was so high. I was higher than the house. New York record people migrated to L.A. Billboard moved there to the offices in the 9,000 building. This influx of East Coast egos changed the dynamic of the San Fernando Valley. That's where everybody lived. The Mamas and Papas, the Steppenwolf, Kraft, Sid and Marty Kraft. Everybody lived in Laurel Canyon. That's where. Who was it that? Mama Cass had died there because she ate a chicken bone. Remember that? She swallowed a chicken bone, choked on that. She was a great talent. And then there was the Carpenters, Karen Carpenter. She was anorexic. Mama had shared her chicken with Karen. We'd still have both of them. Record bigwigs were a lot different from the movie bigwigs. You know, the two styles that didn't mesh right away. The record people were eager to establish themselves among Hollywood's power brokers and celebrities, but it wasn't such a good life. So they found their own neighborhoods, watering holes and party spots. My house was among them. That became Calabasas. That's why everybody moved to the valley. It was our own Beverly Hills. We made it Beverly Hills. In 1978, about a year at Fox, Carolyn and I got married. A minister performed a simple ceremony in a game room. About 100 people came. We played Spin the Bride. Carolyn's girlfriend from Jersey, my family, everybody from Fox. Harvey was my best man. I was stoned. And who was with me? See, I'm doing telltale. Carolyn told me that if I weren't stoned, I wouldn't have married her. I said, that's not true. I always loved you. She says, no, I mean, if I knew that you were stoned, like you were stoned, I wouldn't have married you. Oh, I said. I certainly don't regret marrying Carolyn. I would have liked to have been there for my own wedding, though. That would have been nice.